So when people ask how to become more creative, they usually expect some type of trick, some type of framework, some type of technique to make their brain more creative. But at the end of the day, the truth is way more simple and easier than that, okay? If you're not feeling creative, it's because you're not living enough. And that's as simple as it gets, okay? So creativity doesn't just show up out of nowhere. You're not born with creativity, okay? Creativity just comes from the things you go through and the experience that you live through, the stuff you actually feel. Okay, the things that shake you up, the things that make you happy, the things that make you sad at the end of the day, the good and the bad moments. And if you're not creative, it's not because you're boring, but it's because your brain is getting nothing new to kind of work with, nothing new to feed on. Okay, you lack novelty probably. People think that creativity is the thing that happens in the studio when you get to work. But at the end of the day, it starts way before that. Okay, it starts with how curious you are in the world. Okay, how much do you pay attention to things around you, and how much you're just letting new things and new experiences hit you? Because art is basically like an expression of your existence in the world. And your art is going to be shit. It's going to be no, it's not going to be creative if you're not existing in new places in the world. And that's kind of the idea you have to have. Like, art is just a reflection of how you're living in the world and how much you're putting yourself out there. And if you're not putting yourself out there, you're not going to be able to be creative when it comes to your art. Okay. And so try to think about that, especially before you make music. If you're just going through the cycle of like, going work and then making music and then making another song, like, at the end of the day, you're not giving your brain any new thing to feed on. So if you're making 10 songs a day, you probably won't be as creative as you would be if you went out and lived life and then came back and only made one song a day. And another thing that people talk about is kind of creative burnout, okay? Because I think like creative burnout can be explained by my idea of like novelty and experiences. Because at the end of the day, most artists, they will dry up because all their inspiration comes from that artistic medium. So if you're a musician, for example, you'll probably be creatively burnt out or dried out because you're just consuming music. If you consume music and you compare music and you analyze music, then what's going to happen is you can't expect your brain to form something different and something new if you're just using music and things that already exist in that framework. If you're using music that already exists to try and come up with new music, you're not going to be able to come up with anything good at the end of the day, because you can't cook a new dish with the same recycled ingredients. It doesn't work like that. You need to find something new in the world. The best ideas, they usually come from like outside of the art form, like the little things in life, the little things you notice, random conversations, something in your like local area or some shit. you know Creativity is basically like connecting dots in a way that only you could do, and kind of like following your heart. And like thinking about that, like the curiosity thing, like creativity just comes from curiosity. And like try and think like which people would be the most creative if you just use that kind of curiosity framework. Like, which people are the most curious in the world? Probably, like, you were probably the most curious when you were a child, and that is probably when you were the most creative. And like, speaking of childhood, if you're being real, like, most of our creativity lived back when we were children, when we were just writing stuff and creating fucking stories with our friends and playing games. We're kind of like making up things as you go. And like, at the end of the day, try and like think back to that, because I think those kind of experiences that you had as a kid, those are creative sparks. If you can try to tap back into that mindset of when you were a kid and how things felt and how the world looked and those experiences that you had, you're going to be tapping back into your creativity that you had as a kid. I think people grow up too fast, and when you grow up too fast, you're going to lose that creativity, okay? Because when you were a kid, you probably weren't like overthinking everything. You weren't worried about looking stupid or embarrassing yourself or, scared to try new things. You weren't thinking, oh, does this fit my brand, or are people gonna laugh at me on Instagram? Will people like this? You didn't care when you were a kid. You were just doing things because they genuinely interested you, and that is the kind of energy we need to bring back, especially if you want to become a creative person. Just try and follow what's actually like interesting or exciting to you. I mean, somewhere along the line, kind of adulthood kind of kills creativity. We start trying to impress people. We start trying to monetize things. We look at what's actually going to bring us success in the way that this capitalistic world judges success. We start carrying these realistic expectations for ourselves. Um, it's like every song has to live up to some unrealistic expectations, and what's gonna happen eventually, like every song will just fail. Everything you do, you're bound to fail if you just going into it with like an idea of just the thing that you need to like over deliver, you know. It's kind of like Kendrick said on To Pimp a Butterfly, like we're constantly pimping the butterfly. We're constantly kind of like forcing ourselves to create, not because we want to create, but because we need to meet the demands of this world. And so if you want to be creative again, like and unlock your creativity, you kind of have to detach from that, kind of stop thinking about actually like what the world thinks and just follow the heart, man. And so kind of stop pimping the butterfly. And when you hold yourself like to that every time you create, it becomes way more freeing when you try to like break down that wall of like expectations. Stop putting expectations on yourself, like, because at the end of the day, you're creating, you're not performing. Okay, you don't want to perform, you're not trying to win, you're just trying to, well, you're trying to win, but not with the numbers. You're trying to win just by expressing yourself. And when you do that, that is when the numbers will come, and that is when people will actually start listening to your shit, you know. Because like real creativity is supposed to feel light, you know. It's supposed to feel easy. If you feel like making this stuff or making art feels like work, then you're not doing it the right way. It shouldn't feel hard. It shouldn't feel like work, you know. It's gonna come naturally when you stop caring about others. And that's kind of the idea, you know. And the real secret is that like you are creative. Everyone's creative. It's just that like you put too much expectations on yourself. And when you do that, you kind of constrain your creativity. You're not allowing yourself to be creative because you're kind of forcing yourself to live up to like an expectations, you know? And so you burying your creativity under pressure, under fear, under expectations, under comparison. Like how many times have you seen other artists your age in your genre and you're just comparing yourself to them and thinking, okay, I need to make shit like this or whatever. You know, when you every time you're doing that, you're just suppressing creativity. Like, and that has to change if you want to become creative. So, you know, that's what I'm trying to say. And like you don't do that by working harder or finding secret tricks or whatever. You do that by kind of loosening those expectations and loosening the grip and the pressure that you pile upon you, you know? And I feel it's like it's very easy to fall into this idea that you need to work harder if you're not creative. But like as I said, creativity is about loosening your grip and kind of like removing that expectation, that strain, you know. Just start living again, just start noticing things, just start being curious again, start just trying things out, you know, and like start letting yourself do what you want to do instead of doing things because you have to do them, you know, especially when it comes to like your creativity, because you're not doing this isn't a, like this is a business, but it isn't purely a business when you're an artist, you know, and kind of allowing yourself to just like chill out a bit, you know, because creativity is a byproduct of being alive, you know. It's not a thing that you can just train yourself to do. You just have to live and it's gonna come, and you have to trust that it's gonna come, you know. And like if you want to be more creative, you don't push harder, but you just let go a little bit. And I feel like I need to give something like practical because I just rambled on for a while. But I mean, if you want something practical to hold on to, then something you could do, you could be just like doing small things that might make you feel alive again. You know, nothing dramatic, just a little bit of things that actually like ground you in the present moment. So maybe just kind of like taking a step back from like always being on your phone and shit. Just try to think and like live life and talk to people, you know, like being human instead of just like locking yourself in your room and just working every day, you know. Go somewhere new, for example. That's a good one, I think. Go somewhere new once a week, even if it's just like a different like street or neighborhood or cafe, just something you've never been in before. And don't use your phone. Go to a new place and just sit and think or talk to people or whatever, you know. Talk to people that you would never talk to. Say hi to someone, whoever. Like let yourself even get bored, be bored on purpose. Like actually like sit down and like stare at your damn wall. Like don't do shit. Like be uncomfortable, I think is a good way to kind of like force that creativity out to you. And you know, like try something creative like outside of your like normal creative thing. Like if you're a musician, for example, try drawing, try making a movie, whatever. Just try and like, because at the end of the day, you're not gonna find inspiration in your lane. You're gonna find inspiration outside of it. As I said, you're not gonna make something new if you just look at your lane, you know. So maybe try something new. I don't know. Like try to tap back into the mindset of being a kid again, just doing it for fun, doing it like a game like you're playing, whatever, you know. And to end off, I guess like maybe the most important thing is like whenever an idea pops up, and it can be like a stupid idea, a small idea, whatever, just follow it for a few minutes and give your ideas kind of time to breathe. Create something with your ideas. Don't ask if the ideas are good. Don't ask if it's worth it or worth sharing. Just try and like sit with that little moment of just being curious, because that is creativity. And I think a lot of people, like, you feel like you're not creative because you're dismissing your creativity as like bad ideas, but there are no bad ideas. Just try shit out, you know. And like, if you just follow your little moments of curiosity, more are gonna come start knocking, you know. It's just gonna start flowing. So yeah, I mean, that's, I guess, the closest thing to like practical advice that I could give without sounding like a fucking guru. So I mean, live a little more, be a little bit more present, try and play a little, be a fucking kid again, and just trust, have some faith, man. Have some faith that the creativity will follow. And that is everything for today. If you like this, just let me know. Whatever. Have a good life. Peace.